Hey, so I just want to do a little follow-on video of my previous tree tutorial, having a tree react to the wind. There's some obvious limitations with that, and it doesn't really react to things. I've come up with a better method using MassFX, and I think the overall method is a lot simpler to set up as well. Well, setting up the leaves and everything can remain the same, so if you want to know how to set up the leaves on this tree, just go back to the previous video. I'll put the link there, and you can see how to set up the leaves in that video, etc, etc. Ooh. Ooh. Alright, so all we need for this method is the tree mesh and the bones. So if I hide the tree, you can see here that I've got the bones that will control the tree mesh. And that's all you need for this method. So what we're going to do is we're just going to set up a joint structure with MassFX. We want to convert all these bones to rigid bodies. So to do that, we just select them all and go up here to where it says make rigid body, and we'll just click that. And what that's going to do is it's going to, if I go onto a bone, it's going to add a rigid body. You can see here by default it's set to dynamic, but we want the first bone in the structure to be set to kinematic. And that's important because we only want this to react to things we tell it to react to. So when we move it, we want it to react, but we don't want it to react to, say, wind or gravity or anything like that. Now we can select all these other bones, and I'm just going to go up here, and I'm just going to make a quick selection to bones. So now when I make that selection, now it's only going to select the dynamic rigid body bones. So now if we go into the MassFX toolbar, if we go to this third tab, we can affect all these settings for all these bones. Click off this for now. Now we've got our bones set up, so if I press play, you can see that they all fall down around each other. Actually, one thing that, that's a good habit to get into just before you go too far is in your simulation settings. I like to just up these steps, you know, to get a better simulation just from the get-go, because a lot of the times you might get results that you don't want, and all you have to do is up your iterations. Alright, so now what we have to do, we have to tell these joints that they're actually part of a hierarchy. So just click, say, this bone here, and we'll go up to here where it says create a rigid joint or a rigid constraint, and if I hold down, it'll give me a whole bunch of presets that I can choose. And for this example, I'm just going to create a universal constraint. And now you'll see this big gizmo that tells you what the joint looks like. So I'll just set it to something small like that. This little cone tells you the limits of how far this rigid body is going to rotate. But you can see that the cone's facing out this way. It's not facing in the direction of the rigid body that we added it to. So the first thing we'll do is we'll add its parent. So we want this rigid body joint, we want it parented to this rigid body. So we'll just click here in parent, and we'll just click the first rigid body here. So now this joint is controlling this rigid body, but it's parented to this rigid body. A quick way to get this joint aligned to the child is just to go over here, and you can just click this button to align it automatically. So now you can see that it's going to work fine. So what we'll do now is a really simple way is to just right click, do clone, make sure it's on copy, go OK. And now you've got a clone, and you can just select, instead of this bone now, you can select this one and set it to follow this bone. So now we can just keep going through. So if I clone again, go OK. Now what I want to do is I want to go up the chain. So if instead of this bone now I want this one, so I'll choose the child, this bone. And now if I don't want the parent to be this anymore, I want the parent to be this bone. So if I go parent to this bone and then set the child. So I don't know if that makes sense, I probably went a bit too far, but basically that just, you know, it puts everything in the right spot. So you can just go through and add these joints to every single bone that you have here. Okay, so now I've gone through it, I've finished off adding those joints. And now one thing you want to do just quickly is make sure you select all the joints and go into your selection set and make another set called joints. So now all the joints are set up. So if we play it, you can see, you know, that's cool. If you want a tree like that, then we're done. So now we just have to make it not look so jelly-like. So what we can do is we can select all our joints and we can go into this MassFX panel, the Affect All tab, and we can just go through here and set these settings and it will affect each of these joints at once. So we don't want it to translate, we'll keep that how it is. And what we're going to do is the limit of these angles is set to 45 degrees. So it's probably a bit much for what we want for a tree. So we'll set that to say something like, let's set it to 5 degrees on both. We'll just play that back and see what it does. So it's not bending as far this time. But you can see it's got a little bit of jerkiness about it, because if we go here, you can see here, see how these two bones, see how they're intersecting with each other? And what that means is when we simulate, the bones are trying to keep away from each other, but they don't want to bend further than 5 degrees. The problem with that is we're getting this crazy bloody epo tree going on. So we just want to change the way so that these rigid bodies don't collide with each other from the get-go. But one way of doing that is we can click on the bone itself and go into the rigid body properties. If we just expand this, we can go down here to the mesh transform, and this will allow us to control the rigid body mesh. So if we just move this now, you can see that this is what the mesh of the rigid body looks like. So it's just mimicking the bone. But what we want to do is we want to change that mesh. So we can just go down here to say, let's just change the shape type to something like a box for now. And now you'll see that it's a box. And what we can do is we can actually, because we're in mesh transform mode, we can actually move this in any position we want. So if we just set our translate gizmo to set to local mode, we can just slide this up so that now it's not intersecting with this bone. And we can also, now that the length is going past these joints, we can actually bring that down so it's more, in line with just in this little area here. And we can bring this out, bring the box out of it just so it's a little bit bigger. And now, basically, what we've got is this square is now our collision area. So all this area here and all this area here will be ignored by the rigid body collision. So it's going to make the joints behave a lot more like joints because they don't start off with these two rigid bodies colliding. So if we just go to this bone, so click off that. Now if we go to this bone next to it, and we just do the same thing here. Yep, so now you can see if I select these both, you can see that now we've just got these two boxes that they're going to act as our collision zones. So when something hits this is what's going to be making our reactions. So it doesn't have to be too detailed, but if you get problems, you might obviously want to change it to some other shape, like a, you can change it to any sort of thing like a capsule or anything like that. But I find these boxes work pretty well for the time being. So just go through each of these rigid body bones and just go through and change their collision shape so that they're not interacting at the joints. Alright, so I've gone through and I've just changed up the rigid body shapes for all of these bones. So now we'll just give it a play and see what happens now. So you can see that it reacts a lot better. It doesn't have as much wobbliness to it, but one problem now is you'll see that it's actually taking a while to come to rest, and that's caused by another issue. So if we just go in and choose all our joints again, go into this select all or edit all function, and if we go down here to see the spring settings, if it goes too far away from its resting position, we can tell it to come back to its resting position. So we only need to adjust the swing because we haven't got twist and we haven't got position. So let's just adjust the swing. If it goes past its limit, we want it to come back to its resting swing really quick. So we want to get back there fast. So we'll set it to a limit of, say, to a number of about 10. And then what that's going to do is it's going to mean it's going to say, oh, I'm past the limit, quickly swing back to my resting position. But what's going to happen is, because it's going so fast, it's going to end up past its limit again, then it's going to swing back again, and it's going to go back and forth really, really quickly, because it's just trying to get back to its position that is going over past its limits. So we want to set the damping. So when it starts to shoot back to its resting position, it doesn't just shoot back, it starts to it softens. So so we want to heighten this number as well. So I just set it to 10. So both 10 and 10. And what that should do is it should smooth out the wobbliness and make it come to rest a lot quicker. So now if we play, you can see now it's more, it's come to rest. Now you've got a nice tree. So now this tree is pretty much done. We can do things now. We can add this box like this, and I'll just put this over here somewhere. And if I animate this box going forward past, like, through the tree, and I set this to a kinematic rigid body so it keeps our animation. Now if we play this now, you'll see that the tree is going to react to the box because it's set up with MassFX. So it's going to react to this tree, but it might get a little bit jittery because it hasn't got any twist. So what we can do is, if we go into the joints again, so we can edit all the joints, we can actually enable a twist so that it gives you a bit more freedom when it starts to interact with things. So we can limit that. We want it to maybe set it to something small, like say 5 degrees each way. So the total twist is about 10 degrees. And now when we play this back, it should hopefully have a bit more flexibility when it reacts with things, just because it twists a little bit. But obviously, if you set the twist too high, you're going to get issues like this. So it's twisting around to compensate to go where it wants to go, but it's twisting too much that the tree's now, it's not bending how it should. So that means the twist is too high. So we can just go in and we can set the twist a bit lower. So maybe 2 and 2. And also one thing, if we add twist, we have to actually add the springs settings to the twist. If we play this back now, boom. Now you can see that it's reacted to this box. Notice that I can also add forces. So add a wind modifier, and if I just move this down and say over this way, and I animate the wind on, say, about frame 100, I want to make the wind go to, let's say strength 10. I'll go back a few frames and set it to 0 so it animates on, and then maybe around here, I just want to animate the wind direction to just go over there, and then animate the wind going off. If we play this back, it's not gonna react to the wind by default, and that's because we have to set the rigid bodies to react to the wind. So that's why when we made our selection, we select our bone selection, go into the MassFX tools, edit all, and then if we scroll down to forces, we can just add this wind force just like that. And now when we simulate back, you can see that this will now react to the wind that we've got. The only thing with this is it doesn't happen in real time. You have to actually simulate. So once your scene's all finished and done, you can just go into MassFX. You can bake all these rigid bodies so that you don't have to resimulate every time. That's how to get the tree to react with collisions and with forces in MassFX. So yeah, thanks for watching. See you soon, hopefully, for another video on something.